There cannot be a greater satisfaction than to know that things are digging in from learning. Okay, so we started the second section on page AYIN Vav, and we're dealing now with a very, very sensitive issue. Avodas Hashem, and not just Avodas Hashem on a general scale, but Avodas Hashem that has a direct effect on the Nefesh HaBahamis, which ultimately refines Nefesh HaBahamis, makes it more sensitive, more capable to relate to Elokus. This is real Avodah. I want to just interject that the word Avodah in Lashon HaKodesh normally we translate it as doing work. In other words, being employed by somebody and doing the work that's necessary to be done. Even there's a deeper and broader meaning to the word. But in general, the word avodah, in essence, means to take something that is raw, that is unusable by human beings because it's in its raw state, and then to work it out and to transform it to something that becomes, that acquires a human quality. Like if you take raw meat, as healthy as it may be, it is not edible and it is not food. If you properly spice it and you properly prepare it and then cook it up, then it becomes real food. That way you make it, then you transform it into food rather than meat. So avodah means to work something out through and to transform it into some into a meaningful state. There's an expression in Halacha, in Mishnah, oides avudim. Oides means hide. You take hide off an animal. It's not leather. And if you let it stay like this, it's going to rot in no time. As fast as meat will rot. But then avudim means you work it through. You bring out the inner strength of that hide. By how do you work it out? You actually treat on it, beat it up. You squeeze out all extremities, all unnecessary and meaningless openings, and it becomes contorted and becomes completely, so to speak, focused on what hide is supposed to be, and then becomes leather, and leather can last years. So we're talking about avodah Hashem, avodah with nefesh habahamis, which means really to work through, to transform the nefesh habahamis, that the nefesh habahamis becomes something that it can relate to Elokus. This is a tremendous transformation. And how does this occur? The avodah in essence, this is not possible in a literal animal. Only a human being can accomplish this. What's the difference? Because a human being has these final koiches, the seichel and midas. An animal also has midas, but it does not have seichel. And therefore, they cannot be that kind of a transformation. What happens with this seichel and midas? The seichel has access to actual elokus, to recognition of elokus. Then from the seichel, you draw that which is pertinent to midas, and you imbue it in the midas, elevate the midas to be reflective of the seichel, and then the nefesh habahamis begins to budge, because it can experience the midas. Seichel it cannot experience, but the midas it can experience.
To back up there a second, the process was you take from the seichel, you distill something from the seichel, that an element that will relate to the emotions,
to midas, right?
And then you sort of use that to approach.
Okay, so that's the next stage. Once you bring it down to midas, in simple terms, you fully elaborate and fully recognize the value and the goodness and the truth of elokus and the significance of elokus in your life. Then that comes into midas, that it is no longer something that you recognize, but it's something that you actually experience. It becomes something that is due to you, like you say, Abba v'yira. You acquire a sense of love for elokus and yira and fear of elokus.
To remain on this call, press 1.
What should I do? Press 1 or get out of there?
Press 1.
What?
Press 1.
Press 1.
Never know.
Returning to the conference room. When one recognizes, like I said, in Moichin and Seich, how something is, that this is very dear, very significant in your life, then you begin to have a personal affinity to it, a personal relationship to it. This goes into the midas already. You appreciate it and you have Abba v'yira.
So that personal relationship or affinity is the affecting of the midas, yeah?
Right, this is a midas.
And the fact that there is that contact point, that seichel is becoming personal, is just on account of, like what was said before, working on it, focus, delving into it? Or is there some other element?
No. Yes, it is that. Now, but it behooves us to understand what is the process. How would seichel relate to midas? Seichel is on a remote level. Seichel is the mila, the way it is above. The shemayim. How does it relate to oryx, to the feeling, to the personal feeling? So this we discussed, I don't remember exactly Friday or Thursday.
No, Ahava v'yira is a seichel quality.
No, Ahava v'yira is midas.
Is midas?
Right, but in Seichel, included in Seichel is Midas.
But it is included in the same.
Yeah, there's Midas that are included in Seichel. And this is what we discussed the other day.
Yeah, that's the contact point.
Yeah. How are Midas included in Seichel?
How Midas is included in the same.
Yeah. Where do they fit in? Where do Midas fit into Seichel? Seichel is bent on recognizing and seeing that which is higher. And this is its aim. It wants to rise up and to understand something which is above the state where it is. The intangible is what Seichel is going for. Exactly the opposite of Midas. It's not looking to that which can grasp. It's looking, what is this which I see and I cannot really identify. This is what Seichel is doing. How then does that translate into Midas? At all levels, and then further down into Machshava Dibur Ma'aseh. So this is an extremely important principle that we have to understand. We already attempted to bring it in. I'll take a very simple example, as we always do.
Machshava Dibur Ma'aseh is
Thought, speech, and deed.
for Seichel. It's from Seichel.
No, that's it. Is places for Midas.
Also.
Surely there might come after Midas. Thank you. Okay, here's a principle. To give us a very mundane and tangible illustration of the principle. We speak about looking up at the sky. And we recognize that we're looking at something that we cannot grasp. And we are able to observe a spread without limit and without components. Like we said, on Earth we immediately think of components. How big is it? How many miles is it? The sky doesn't even bring out that question. It's above the whole earthly phenomenon. And we observe it. And here is a question that I'd like we should contemplate. When we observe the sky, it could be, like observation could be in the following two forms. One is, this is my projection, this is my imagination, or this is real. In my imagination means I'm enjoying looking, experiencing this, but there's nothing. It's not meant for me to observe it. It's not in my world. It's not a real thing from my perspective. But I open my eyes, I grasp it, and I say, it's a nice experience. But there's no truth in this experience. Or we could say, no. This is an absolute truth. The world was created, Shamayim and Oretz. And if I should live in the world and experience and partake of the world in the fullest, I have to include Shamayim and Oretz. And Shamayim is one of the primary realities in that experience. So if Shamayim is a primary reality in the experience of worldly living, then that means that included in that concept, in that view, in that projection, is how does this translate in terms of your feelings or in terms of your actions? If this can only remain in observation, then it is your projection. If it is a real creation, a creation means that it goes from top to bottom, from Shemayim to Oretz.
If it's a real creation, it has to touch the earth.
Yeah, that's right. It has to touch the earth in a very significant manner.
Okay, this was to describe. This was to illustrate the principle that what
that from Moichin come midas.
Okay,
And then ultimately, as we're going to see, these midas can affect the nefesh haba'os.
and the reason that is because anything that's real must impact the lowest level.
Yes. Do you understand that?
This refers to the tzaddik and the RASHAB.
What?
The tzaddik and the RASHAB impacting the world, impact everybody.
Here is the question. You eat food and it's tasty. You enjoy it. If all the food gives us is that enjoyment, but it does not really give you nourishment, plain down to earth nourishment, is it food or is it not?
It's not.
Is it what?
Is it food? Food that you can eat indefinitely, and it doesn't fill your belly. It doesn't have to digest it. Is that food?
Yeah, but okay. That being said, though, it does seem to be something that's safely and true that doesn't necessarily have a bechain. An implication that's going to.
That's what we're saying cannot be.
Cannot
To
be.
remain on this call, press 1.
I think this time we'll go for it.
So, every time there's a seichel, even though sometimes we do not focus on an implication, we try to focus on the seichel per se. But ultimately, any seichel has to, like you just said,
So
provide
this is the
nutrition,
question. This
right?
is
It
the
has
question
to
which I
touch the
posed.
lowest world.
This is the question I posed. You focusing on the experience of your seichel or on the exposition of the seichel?
The exposition?
Well, the exposition, what the seichel tells you. Like the taste of the food or the food?
Well, what you said, something popped up
Okay.
in my mind that you said food, is it nourishing? Does it feed you? That's one thing. Is it real food because it gives you sustenance? And there's also the subjective impression that food could taste good or not good. I mean, it could taste good for you and not for me. It's subjective, and it's off topic probably, but there is also that issue. Food as nourishment and food as pleasurable.
Well, this is true, but it's not really true. It's true in the sense that at any given time you have a certain level of refinement of what you will appreciate in terms of taste of food. Talking about food, it's a simple thing. But that is not the end of the story. That can further be developed. And ultimately, you can reach, what's called the training of the palate. And give a child a herring, salted herring, and spit it out. I had an experience like this. I brought my son Yossi to REBBE by his optioners, I think it was. The REBBE was sitting in there, and Yossi came over, and the REBBE gave him a little mashke.
For your son?
For my son. And my son, I stood right in front of him, and took a little sip, and spit it out. And the REBBE smiled from year to year.
It's exactly what I'm referring to.
Right.
That's an extreme example.
No, it's not. This is a stage. Today, you also can say l'chaim, and more than once. So let's leave that. Let's just understand what we're going to focus on here. It's important to understand that any experience we have is really a godly creation. It is not something that we are projecting on the circumstance we like this or like that. And if it is a godly creation, there is an inherent truth and reality to it. At the level of a godly truth and a godly reality. Godly truth and reality permeates everything. Everything. Like we say, I always mention this pasuk in Tehillim. Im Hashem lo yivne bayis, shav omlo bein avei. If Hashem would not be involved in building a house, shown then from naught, you're wasting your time trying to build it. Without Hashem's participation, you're wasting your time. What does that mean? Because everything that a person builds, a table, a chair, a house, he has to have a godly sense. What is the truth of this which I'm building? And if he doesn't have that element, then it's going to fall apart under his hands. Let's take a very simple illustration for us. If a table is a table, just a form, it does not have the significance of standing in your dining room and supporting your Shabbos meal, then the table, you're never going to finish building it. And when you're building it, it's not going to be a real structure. Coming back to Seichel that we're talking about, when one projects understand in Seichel, he understands that he recognizes that it's not merely that I understand it because I like to understand it. I understand it because it's real, because it's a godly creation, because it's true. This is why we spent a lot of time explaining what is the meaning when it says in Chassidus that Seichel is based on Rotzen. which is not to be misunderstood, that I understand because I understand what I want to understand. That's not real seichel. Real seichel means that it's real, that it's true and true. I understand because it's true, not because I want to understand. So how come Rotzen is the underpinning, is the foundation, is the base for seichel?
It provides what's real.
What does it say?
What's real.
It provides what is real. To take an extremely simple example.
Was it called will?
What?
About true, it wasn't called will, was it called Rotzen?
Truth comes down to us through the level of Rotzen. If it is something which is wanted, if it has a value, then that truth exists in our world. If it does not have a value in our world, then there's no way that it can come down and say. Rotzen is that point where the truth of our being recognizes this is of value. Once it is of value, seichel cannot be applied to this. Is that efficient? Is that clear? So, Miss you.
Yeah.
Therefore, anything that we understand in seichel inherently contains in it a full structure of the creation. And the full structure of creation is Bereshis bara Elokim as Hashamayim v'Haaretz. That's a full structure.
Huh. And that, yeah. And that full structure, those two pieces also interface. They're also not categorically different. Like you
Okay, they
describing
interface.
the sky and the earth. Because at first glance, heaven and earth seem to be completely different.
The Hashamayim v'Haaretz. In everything of Oretz there is an element of Shamayim. In everything of Shamayim there's an element of Oretz. Shamayim can relate to Oretz, and Oretz can relate to Shamayim.
And as much as this is a fallen world and this is gullus and all the rest of it, still there's a thread of truth that goes from seichel to earth.
Okay.
So Shamayim and Aretz have the same value in terms of truth relation.
They're both things that he made.
Together they promote, they represent the godly phenomenon of the creation. Together. Shemayim alone is not a creation, Oretz alone is not a creation. I don't understand, we spent a lot of time with this, it doesn't matter if you speak a little more. We said that there is a house and there is a home. And we all understand that this is categorically two different things. Not only do you understand that it's two different things categorically, the concept, but even if you have something that looks like a home, but it's not really a home, nobody ever lived in this, already it loses its significance. So that if you have a Shamayim v'Oretz, but there's no human being in that beautiful structure, there is nothing there. When did Shamayim v'Oretz become really Shamayim v'Oretz? No, the Rishon was brought into the undersea. Okay? All right, let's see if we can. So there is the idea for avodah. Avodah consists of working through from the seichel into midas, and ultimately, if it goes through the midas, it can have an effect on the nefesh habamis itself. Nefesh habamis cannot be affected by seichel, although you can understand the seichel. It's not dull, dumb, and it's not stupid. But it cannot take it from the seichel and say, okay, that's what I'm going to live with. But when this seichel is brought down into midas, which is the experience of Elokus, nefesh habamis then can have an affinity with it. Because that's what nefesh habamis is. It has feelings. And if it's feelings from Elokus, it can be affected by that feeling. Okay, so let us stop. You have to do something inside. 4 lines from the top of the lower section, at the end.
4 lines from the top?
Yeah, at the very end, after the parentheses. So the Rebbe explained that Meichin alone do not affect the Nefesh Habamis. No matter how much you explain, the Nefesh Habamis does not budge, as we said, Ein Nitak, does not budge from its position. It's fine and good, but what does that have to do with me? Ki'im only. Al-Yedei ho'aveido de'ava v'yiro davko. As a result of the aveido, of the working through, of ahava v'yiro, of having ava for Elokus and yiro for Elokus, davko. Only then. Ki ha'nefesh habamis ikroi hu midas. Because the nefesh habamis ikroi. What does ikroi mean? Its core, its essence, its principal stance is midas.
Ki'im, can we go back to the first?
Yeah, ki'im only.
Yeah.
Al-Yedei ho'aveido de'ahaba v'yiro davka. To affect nefesh habamis, it is only as a result of avodah of ahava v'yira. Ahava v'yira means ava for Elokus and yira for Elokus. But nefesh habamis have to do with it, and yet nefesh habamis that they can relate to. Ki nefesh habamis ikro yehum midos, because nefesh habamis ikro, its core, its principal essence, is in midos. Midas means what it experiences. This means midas. And they can experience something very coarse, and can experience something very fine. After, a bit of training and a bit of perfection, you can experience something which is finer.
When I asked about Ahava V'yira, I said last week sometimes that it says that should be able to relate to it. How can we have Ahavas Hashem in that sense? There's no...
That's why before that we have the moich, we reflect on the closeness of the goodness of Elokus. We reflect on when we mizvoin on Elokus. To be mizvoin on Elokus the way it is, the Milo is useless for midas. That's what nefesh Elokus. When he's born in the Lakus, like the Alter Rebbe gives in Tanya, whole Cheshbon, he took us out of Mitzrayim, and he bestowed upon us his blessing. He gave us a sense of real life, and we appreciate what that life is. This is where Abba Yira comes in, and that's an Abba Yira that can affect the Nefesh HaBayis. That's what's called real avodah.
But that Yahweh is not enough, because if it's only about the goodness and what I received, this is not real Kabbalah all. It's only because
Kabbalah soil is a machshava dibur ma'isa. This is in the feeling, in the essence of the Nefesh HaBayis. Kabbalah soil is a different realm. I don't know how much time, just one nakuda as far as Kabbalah soil is concerned. When you have a melech, the king provides for his nation an entire perspective of how do you live? What is the significance of this kingdom? What are we focused on? Why do we have a kingdom separate from the next door? This is what the king provides. And therefore nobody appreciates what the king has. He has really elevated us and he gave us a significant life. This is wonderful. But if the country is attacked and you have to mobilize and go and fight the enemy, it will not be sufficient that I'm going to fight the enemy because I want to retain my way of life. He has his own life. Oh, forget it. Let it be like him. What mobilizes a nation to fight off an enemy? The protection of the king himself. I not only want the influence of the king, I want the king himself. That we cannot really experience. This is Method Kabbalah. All right, this is it for this morning. I'm sorry. Okay?
Tomorrow morning, 6:30.
That's it.
I feel that this switching gears now. We always talked about now we come again how we experience it and develop that.